Hey guys, today I'm doing a power jack replacement on an MSI Stealth 15M laptop. This is one that came in where a customer had attempted to replace the jack themselves. I wasn't sure of the initial symptoms besides they said the jack was just going bad, so I was assuming you could kind of wiggle it to make it work, or it was loose or broken or something. And the first step is the disassembly with this thing, and you want to remove all the screws on that bottom panel so you can remove the bottom panel from the computer. This has about 12 bottom screws on the bottom here, and they all need to come out. Alright, so once you have all the bottom screws removed, you can take a thin guitar pick or whatever pry tool you choose, and you just want to go around the perimeter in between the bottom cover and the chassis, and you just want to try to get a little bit of that bottom cover pried up so you can take your other hand and kind of hold on to it and apply some pressure so that thing will start coming up. So as you can see here, that the bottom part of it started to come up, and now I'm going to go across the top of it. And there you go, eventually that bottom cover will come off. And the next step here is just to remove the battery. There's 3 screws in the back of the battery that hold this thing down. So you just want to remove those 3 screws, and then you can kind of lift up on the battery like I'm doing here, and then you'll use your other hand to kind of pull that battery back. Just be really careful you don't pull on the wires. You can rip them out of the battery side or the socket side, so just be really gentle when you're removing it. And here I'm going to remove the SSD drive. There's just a single screw that you want to remove, and then the drive kind of comes out at a slight angle. You can just pull it up and out. Nice and easy. And the next thing here is going to be the, looks like I was going for the Wi-Fi leads there. But faked myself out. Now I'm going for the touchpad and the keyboard. And these are just flip up, flip down connectors that lock those ribbon cables in. So you flip up the little connector, it doesn't come off, doesn't come out, and then that flip up unlocks it, and then you flip it back down. And there I'm just pulling the speaker back, and that just comes out away from the motherboard. And here's the LCD cable. You just want to kind of remove that tape and static protection there. And that is a flip up, as you can see, that little connector flips up. Then I take that flathead, go underneath it, and pull it back gently. And I make sure to flip those connectors back down so they don't get damaged when I'm doing the power jack replacement. And here I'm just going to remove the 2 Wi-Fi leads for the antenna. And you're also going to want to remove the Wi-Fi card, because that's kind of screwed down into the chassis, and then the other side of it's the motherboard. So this one doesn't really give me much of an angle to pull it out with. I was kind of messing with it, and it was a little tricky to get out here, as you can see. I mean, it should theoretically just kind of come straight out away from that screw, away from the motherboard where it's plugged in. So there's a little piece here I'm trying to use the pliers on that's not the circuit card, like where the screws into. I was just trying to grab it. Maybe I could pull it out, but this doesn't really seem to work. I think sometimes I can wiggle it out like I'm doing there, but I just usually just have a way to wiggle it out. I'm going to try the tweezers. I don't think this works either. Of course, my hand's blocking it. But eventually it just comes out. You just want to push it out away from its connection there. And here's the backlight that needs to get detached as well. And now it's just 2 screws that hold the motherboard in. I was kind of surprised to see this. There's 1 motherboard screw and 1 fan screw, it turns out, but I was taking out this shield looking for screws underneath here because I thought there'd be at least more than what I saw, but I guess it's just 2 screws, one on the fan and one on the other side motherboard, so no screws there. So I'm going to remove that first screw, and then the second screw over here next to the fan. And that's it to get the motherboard out. So now we can just pry up a little bit on the motherboard. I'll just be gentle taking that thing out. And then as you can see, the customer has a bunch of the solder removed. It looks like they were kind of unable to get to the end point there. They have most of it out, but that jack still isn't coming out, so needs a little bit more desoldering. And I end up just using the air soldering station because it's such a job that's almost done. It's just kind of hanging by a thread, so it's easier just to grab the air station and remove it that way safely. So I sped the video up a little bit here to 2 times speed, and as you can see, you have to kind of peel back this layer. This black stuff is over the motherboard to protect it from the bottom cover grounding it out or something. So you kind of have to peel it back to get to the jack. No big deal. You can tape it back down. That's what I end up doing with some thermal tape, and that's a good way to go. So now I'm just gonna take my my flux and go over each one of those through holes, and then I'm gonna take my desoldering braid and try to remove any solder that's left over. There's not much in there, but it's worth kind of going over just to make sure we got everything out. I'm just trying to get the last little bits of solder out of there. And see, it is kind of wiggly, but you never want to rip it out. If it doesn't come out nice and easy by itself, don't try to force it out with a pliers or your fingers or try to rip it out. At the end of the day, more solder needs to come out of there, or you have to use that air soldering station. So I'm just going to take my 99% alcohol and clean up the flux and add some thermal tape before I go out of here. And just trying to cover some of that vital circuitry next to the jack. And it doesn't need much here, but I'm going to reposition in a second because I'm a little too close to the paper that I have underneath. But that's the idea, though, is just to have that solder kind of get broken up by the hot air station, use the tweezers to kind of hold it, and it's going to come out pretty quick because all that solder that's removed. It's definitely going to be a quick job here. I'm just trying to apply some even air over those holes, and there it goes. It kind of comes out. And the next step here is just going to be to kind of clean up those through holes, get them ready for the new jack. And once you have the old jack out of there, it's much easier just to get that braid in there, and all the solder kind of comes up pretty easy. So. Just cleaning everything up here, trying to get all the solder out of there as possible, just flipping the board over this way you can kind of get it from another angle. Now I'm going to take that new jack and fit it in there. Just making sure that leg is inside there properly. And what I like to do I like to take my pliers here, or my cutters, and just put that handle underneath the jack so it stays flush with the motherboard. You know, what you don't want to have is have that jack kind of slanted on one side, or you know, when you try to do the soldering, it can tilt or whatever. Just make sure you get that jack staying flush with the board. You can use whatever you want to put under there. That's just what I do. And now I'm just going to add some solder to each one of these through holes. And I'm just going back over it again, just to make sure all that solder flows through nicely. And once that's all done, just clean that thing up with some 99% alcohol. And that's it. Just need to put that jack or the motherboard back in the laptop and put it all back together, and you're good to go. If you have any questions, just leave a comment. Let me know. Thanks, guys.